Good morning, almost afternoon. So, hi. My name's Eric Hardy. I'm an analyst on the National Student Loan Data System, and I'm with Cindy Battle. Cindy, I don't know what your title is. Master of Everything. So we're going to talk about default prevention, and we're glad that you guys are able to join us. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the reports that are available on NSLDS that support default prevention, and then I'm going to hand it over to Cindy, who's going to talk a lot about the default prevention plans themselves and some other tools. So we got a lot of ground to cover. So I'm going to focus in on 4 reports. However, there are a ton of other reports that are also applicable to default prevention. However, these 4 I think are probably the most useful and the most. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the school portfolio report, which probably has the most information available in one place of all the reports that are on NSLDS. So we're going to talk about school portfolio report, the borrower demographic report, the delinquent borrower report, as well as the school cohort default rate history report, which is another way of saying the loan record detail report or the CDR backup data. So if you've been to any NSLDS session and any of the past conferences, I always have a lot to say about the school portfolio report. And the idea of the school portfolio report is that it produces a single report about all of the loans that are associated with the school's portfolio. It includes direct and FFEL loans. The report's designed to take mergers, so if one school merges into another school code, we take that into consideration. It considers consolidation loans. So once a consolidation loan is made, that consolidation loan itself is no longer not associated to a school. So we use the consolidation linking logic to link that back to the underlying loans to add that student or that loan to your school portfolio report for your individual school. It is available scheduled, meaning that you can go out and set it and forget it, and we will deliver it weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Or you can request the report on demand. It usually takes about 24 hours for the report to generate off the system. You can go right out to the reports tab on NSLDS, request the report, and hopefully we'll have it to you overnight, typically. It is available in fixed width as well as comma separated values format. CSV is a lot easier if you're looking to upload the report into Microsoft Excel or Access. The fixed width versions typically are better if you're trying to use some sort of proprietary tool to load the data into. We also have the School Portfolio Report Reader, which is a Microsoft Access tool that takes the CSV version file and pumps it right into Excel for you. And it's really kind of sharp, actually. It's super quick. And then you can have that data in Excel and sort it and do all sorts of cool stuff with it. So the school portfolio report is on my left, probably your right. The ad hoc version on the report tab is where you can actually put in the school ID, the repayment, the date entered repayment begin date, as well as the date entered repayment end date. That's a mouthful to say. We also have various loan status categories that you can filter for, as well as the program type. So you could just say, we want all of our FFEL loans, we want all of our direct loans, or we want both. And then the extract type, that's that is, do you want a CSV or fixed width? If you are requesting the report on demand for us to deliver, if you're requesting the report to be scheduled, you don't have as many options. You can only receive the report for all of your school locations. We don't allow you to tell us, oh, we only want it for the O1 location, not the O2 location. So if you're requesting it to be scheduled, we're going to give you all of the locations associated with the 6-digit OPID of your school code. you'll also be able to determine the frequency. And the other kind of cool thing about is about the scheduled report is you can determine which TG number it should be sent to, as long as it's a TG number associated with your school code. So if you're doing the on-demand version, it only goes to the TG number associated with your NSLDS user ID. However, if you're using the scheduled, we'll deliver that report to any TG number as long as that TG number has some sort of association with your school code. So that's a one feature. What we know some schools do is automatically have the report delivered to their third-party servicer who has a TG number associated with their school codes, things like that. So not telling you you have to do that, just letting you know how some schools choose to use this functionality. So I want to talk a bit about the logic that goes into the school portfolio report, because then eventually what we're going to talk about is how you can begin to estimate what your cohort default rates are going to look like based upon the data in the school portfolio report. I mentioned that the user specifies that date entered repayment begin and end range. So if you think about the cohort default rates, the denominator is typically, well, not typically, it's loans that are entering repayment within a fiscal year. So if you were to go into the report here and say, I want all loans that entered repayment starting October 1st, 2015, ending, well, let's use October 1st, 2014, then that range ending September 30th, 2015, that's going to give you all the loans that entered repayment in the 2015 fiscal year. That's the denominator for your cohort default rate. As of today, might change. Borrowers go back to school, things like that. But there you have it. There's the denominator. We've already established a denominator, or at least the loans that are going to make up your denominator. So it's just kind of taking these tools and manipulating them a little bit to get your end result here. So you can request the report for a specific cohort year. We just can't tell you you're doing it for a cohort year. You could only request the report for 3 days if you wanted, but that's not going to give you very much data. You probably are wanting to look around graduation periods. When did, if the date under repayment is the end of the grace period, so if you back that up 6 months, that should be typically if you're a traditional school that has one graduation at the end of the year or at the end of the semester, you can start to build your cohorts around different triggers in your academic calendar. So again, that data under repayment gives you lots of flexibility. It's just kind of knowing what that translates to for your individual school business. The other thing I'll point out also with this data under repayment is that if you request the scheduled report, you don't get to put in that data under repayment range, but we're going to automatically give you 6 years worth of data. So it'll be, and I always have to look to say this, the 3 years prior to the current fiscal year, the current fiscal year, and the 2 years following the current fiscal year. So that makes up that 6-year period if you're requesting the scheduled report. So if you're getting that scheduled report and you're only wanting to look at loans that are in cohort 2015, you're going to have to filter out all of the loans that aren't in a fiscal year that you're looking for some way. But if you're doing it on demand, then you can set that criteria before the report even produces. So just wanted to give you another little tidbit there. The other thing that's really important to understand is the school portfolio report is always the current picture about the loans in the portfolio. So it's going to give you the most recent loan status. It's going to give you the most recent outstanding principal balance, the most recent outstanding interest balance, the most recent, I don't know, now I'm having a hard time, like you go blank. The most recent insurance claim payment or the most recent rehab data. It's not going to give you any historical information. So you're not going to be able to see that the loan was in RP loan status, repayment loan status 6 months ago, because now it's in default loan status. We're just going to tell you it's in default loan status. So it's a good idea if you're interested in trending what's happening on the portfolio over time to either request the report at fixed intervals of time so that you can build a history on all of these individual loans, or to use that scheduled report and we'll automatically generate it once a month. Let's get a current picture once a month. Eric was in default last month. This month he's in repayment. That's good. What did we do something right here? What happened to help that borrower get out of default? So it's a good idea if you're wanting to look at historical trends over time. You want to run the report at fixed points in time so you can trend out what's happening. So just some thoughts. Also, I mentioned school mergers are definitely accounted for, as well as the consolidation loan logic is in there. So we do link the underlying loans that are associated with your individual school codes to the consolidation loan if the borrower is consolidated, and we return the information about both the underlying loans that are probably in a closed status because they've been consolidated, as well as the consolidation loan itself. So you can begin to see, did the borrower consolidate and then begin to go delinquent? Well, those underlying loans aren't going delinquent, but if the borrower reaches default on his or her consolidation loan, that's going to impact your cohort default rate. So we do go ahead and include that logic and account for that in the report and the data we're giving back to you. So some key data elements I just wanted to point out for default prevention, as well as what we're going to talk about moving forward, are the current loan status and the current loan status date. The status is going to represent the overall status of the loan. Is the borrower in grace? Is the borrower in repayment? Is the borrower in school? Are they in deferment, forbearance? Have they entered bankruptcy proceedings? Are they in the 3-year monitoring period for disability processing? So it's the overall status of the loan, it's very telling for a number of different reasons. But again, let's remember this is only the current status that we're giving back at any given time. We also have the date entered repayment. So the date entered repayment is on a regular FEL or direct loan is separation plus the grace period plus 1 day. If it's a plus loan, and we do include plus loans in the report as well, it's going to be the day that the loan was fully dispersed. So that date entered repayment is important. We've already talked about it, establishing that denominator for your cohort default rate. It's also going to be helpful if you're looking at trending out what's happening around specific graduation classes or in any sort of cohort. It's a great thing to set a cohort on, is that date entered repayment. We're also going to include the most recent repayment plan and the most recent repayment plan begin date, or actually we should now refer to this as the date of disclosure. We're also going to include the delinquency date. The delinquency date is the day after the borrower's first missed payment. So if a payment was due on November 25th and the borrower didn't make that payment, the delinquency date is going to be November 26th. So I think today is the 1st, right? 30th, thank you. So as of the 30th, the borrower missed that payment on the 25th. They're going to be delinquent 26th, 27th, 28th. They're now on their 4th day of delinquency. Probably not so concerned about borrower that's 4 days delinquent. But when we start getting above 30, 60, 90, well, we're not going to tell you how many days delinquent the borrower is, but we're going to give you that delinquency date so that you can calculate it and figure out who you're interested in looking at. Am I worried about borrowers that are 30 days? No, I'm probably more worried about borrowers that are 270 days. This time. We'll worry about the borrowers that are 30 days tomorrow. But, knowing that tomorrow will be quickly arriving. And then I mentioned the most recent payment effective date. So if the borrower did make a payment, or the last time the borrower made a payment will also be included in this report. Coincides with the delinquency date in many circumstances. It's just going to be, the delinquency date is probably going to be 31 days after the most recent payment date. Maybe not. Um, so some ideas of managing the your portfolio, and some good ideas as so that you're not worrying about doing this after we produce the draft cohort default rate, is run the report for a data entered repayment range. Are those the borrowers you're expecting to see? Are there odd borrowers that we're showing as entering repayment that you wouldn't have expected to be entering repayment? Well, maybe we missed a deferment. So these are some of the things that you can start to do over time, so that once we get to the draft cohort default rate calculation, you don't have to scramble and take a look at that within the 30-day period. It's the 30-day challenge period. 45 days? 45. So, you know, if you're proactively looking at this prior to release of cohort default rates, it starts to become more manageable instead of doing it right after the rates are released. We're going to talk a bit about the borrower demographic report, but you can sync this up with the borrower demographic report to get all of the contact information that NSLDS has for that borrower, and begin reaching out to borrowers that are entering delinquency or in an alarming status. Also a great idea, and you know, I think we talked a bit at the opening session as well. If we are reaching out to borrowers, I think we're up to 3 million emails that we sent out this year to get borrowers on income-driven repayment. Well, this is a good option. You see that a borrower's in standard repayment, and you think income-driven repayment will help reduce that borrower's potential delinquency. There's enough information here for you to see, oh, well, maybe we should reach out and suggest that the borrower explore some of these other options with one of our servicers. So just some ideas. If you're looking at calculating a cohort default rate estimation, there's some key fields that we need to consider. And I will say this right now. The department, by regulation, we are only allowed to produce 2 cohort default rates, a draft and an official. So we cannot produce a cohort default rate that is not a draft or an official rate. So we don't have a report that mimics or creates the cohort default rates over time. So that's why I'm giving you the tools to use this report to do it for yourselves. So it is regulatory that we are not permitted, and that's why we get the question all the time, can you just create a report that shows us what our cohort default rate looks like today? Mm-hmm. Not allowed to do it. It's a strict interpretation of the regs. So if we're gonna consider doing that for ourselves, we have to take a couple key data elements into consideration. The loan type, the date entered repayment, which I've harped on quite a bit, the current loan status date, the CDR date of default, that's an actual field in the report itself, the claim or discharge reason code, as well as the claim or discharge date. So claims are only applicable to commercial FEL. And then, of course, we also want to consider if the borrower has defaulted, and then if they've rehabilitated or repurchased their loans to be removed from being included in the numerator, excuse me. So first you need to figure out, after you get this report, which loans to include. Well, we are only going to initially include subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So that includes SF, SU, those are FEL sub and FEL unsubsidized. SL, those are the old SLIS loans. We don't see too many of those going into repayment. Most of them, well, were made before I started college. So we don't see too many of those going into repayment now, but they are still accounted for in the formula. And then we have our direct sub and unsub. So those are D0s, D1s, and D2s. We want to, if we're going to just pretend that we're doing this for cohort year 13, we're going to want to limit the date entered repayment to October 1st, 2012 to September 30th, 2013. And then the first thing we want to do is to exclude some loan statuses. So if a loan is canceled, it's not considered in the cohort default rate at all. If it's abandoned, which is essentially means that the guarantor of the loan does not know what's happening on the loan anymore, We don't consider those loans. If the loan has been paid off through a closed school discharge, it's excluded. False certifications also excluded, as well as loans that have lost their insurance. Again, that's only on a commercial FFEL loan, not on a direct loan, but we do exclude all of those loan statuses. So as we're filtering out all the loans we don't want to include in our denominator, these are the loans we do want to include in our denominator. So after you've identified only the loans to include in your denominator, then you want to start identifying which of those loans qualify for inclusion in the numerator. So if you're looking at that, first thing we're going to check out to see is if that underlying loan is linked to a consolidation loan. So that's where we start wanting to consider other loan types. That's where we consider our CLs for FFEL consolidations, our D5, D6s, or D9s. And I'm not going into a ton of detail because I'm assuming that most of you guys are going to print this out and take it back to your offices and try to calculate this yourselves. So we're not going to go a super deep dive, but I am going to try to give you enough to attempt to do this on your own, and then you can email me later, which I'm happy if you do. And then we are going to identify if the underlying loan or the consolidation loan has a CDR date of default that falls within the date entered repayment or the 2 fiscal years following the date entered repayment. And that gives us our 3-year numerator period. So the cohort default rates are loans that enter repayment in 1 fiscal year or cohort year, and then default either in that same fiscal year or in the 2 fiscal years following. So we're going to look, after we've identified loans that entered repayment in our fiscal year, now we're going to see, do these loans have a CDR date of default within that fiscal year or the 2 fiscal years following? CDR date of default is only applicable for direct loans, or not just direct loans, I'm sorry. It's applicable for federally serviced loans. So if the department is servicing the loan, you're going to look for a CDR date of default. If it's a FFEL commercial loan, that's where you have to look at the insurance claim payment, not the CDR date of default. So the insurance claim payment is the driver for the numerator on a FFEL commercial loan, as opposed to on a federally serviced loan, it's the CDR date of default. If you have questions about that, that's one of those things we can talk about offline on a one-on-one basis. So again, though, you're going to limit look for that insurance claim payment to be within the date entered repayment to the end of the fiscal year. So a suggestion here, if you're trying to estimate what your cohort default rate is going to look like, you might want to, instead of looking at the insurance claim payment or the CDR date of default, you might want to look at the date of delinquency. So on a federally commercial loan, the CDR date of default is defined as the 360th day of delinquency. So if you see a borrower that is at let's say 300 days delinquency, they only got 60 more days, and then they're going to count as being defaulted in your numerator. So you can, if you start using the delinquency date instead of the CDR default date, you can start to see over time who's potentially going to move into your numerator sooner or later. And I wouldn't encourage you just to worry about the borrowers that are going to default in your CDR. You want to worry about all of your borrowers, but this might be a good place to start. After you've identified who's in your numerator, who's in your denominator, then of those people who's in your numerator, then we get to take some people out of your numerator. So if the borrower has defaulted and then rehabilitated within that same 3-year period, and that's key, then the borrower is removed. So then we want to look for a date of rehabilitation between the CDR date of default and the end of the cohort period, or between the insurance claim payment date and the end of the cohort period. And then we we also consider if a borrower has become bankrupt, disability, they're on a veteran's disability, fraud, or death. If one of those loan statuses are applicable and the loan status is dated effective earlier than the default date, then you can take those borrowers out too. So what happens in many times, and death is just unfortunately the cleanest example to think about it. A borrower passes away, the first note on the action item list is probably not to contact the student loan lender. You know, there's other arrangements. So, and many times when borrowers pass away, the loans begin to go delinquent, and then potentially into default. And then the servicer discovers that the borrower had actually passed away. They're going to backdate the death status to the date that the borrower died, not to the current date. So if the borrower defaulted and then died effective earlier than the default, again, it's a really unsavory way to think about it, but it is a clean example, then that borrower should be removed from the numerator. Now, if the borrower truly did default and then died after defaulting, they still count. But if it is in the reverse situation, we do remove those borrowers from the numerator. So next up is the borrower demographic report. And I've already mentioned that this is a companion report to the school portfolio report. In fact, the selection criteria for the two reports are exactly the same. They're just going to give you, one's going to give you borrower level information, one's going to give you loan level information. So the borrower demographic report includes mailing address, phone number, email address, and all of the contact information that's provided in exit counseling. Again, this at the moment is only available ad hoc. However, we're making it available scheduled starting in February or March, I can't remember, soon. This report as well is available in fixed width or in comma separated values format. Just going to point out here that the selection criteria is almost exactly the same as the school portfolio report, with the exception of we let you designate whether or not you want to also include the exit counseling contact. So if you remember on the exit counseling, the borrower provides references as well as contact information for themselves. So the next report we have is the delinquent borrowers report. And the delinquent borrowers report is designed to specifically identify borrowers that are at a certain point of delinquency. So all the information that's available in the delinquent borrowers report is also available in the school portfolio report, but this is only going to identify delinquent borrowers. So this is a bit more designed for specific use as opposed to that school portfolio report, which is designed for flexible manipulation and trending. So again, it includes all the loans at the OPID, including consolidation loans, and also includes includes Parent Plus loans. So unfortunately, we had a school once notify all of their students whose parents were delinquent on a Plus loan by mistake. So we always make it a point to point out that these reports do include Plus loans, and you don't want to tell. It's not good to tell a student that mom and dad are not making their payments. Or maybe it is, but it probably is for a different discussion. I don't know. So again, this one is available scheduled or ad hoc, and is also available fixed with CSV and also pre-formatted report. And pre-formatted report just means that it looks pretty, quote unquote, on a piece of paper. I don't know that pretty. It looks like it's a mainframe output, which is not pretty. Again, just wanted to show you, if you're requesting it ad hoc, you can specify the cohort year, as well as you can limit it to a specific servicer. So I'm going to pick on Nelnet because they're sitting on the front row. If you only want to see your delinquent loans associated with Nelnet, you could limit it to Nelnet. If Great Lakes is sitting back over here, you could do it for Great Lakes. I won't pick on any of the rest of them. I just chose the two that have the best default rates. I'm kidding. I'm really kidding. I don't know that for certain. I do know for certain, but I'm not going to share if that's really true or not. Then you can also establish which category of delinquency you're interested in. Remember that school portfolio report, we're going to give you the begin date and you can calculate it. If you're going to use the delinquent borrowers report, you can say, give me all my borrowers that are 30 days delinquent as of today. If you're scheduling it for a scheduled delivery, we're going to give you all the categories of delinquency. We're not going to let you limit it to a particular servicer. It's just going to be everybody that's delinquent. I should also note that after a borrower, it's actually on the slide. After a borrower defaults and moves out of from a federal loan servicer and goes to the default management collection system, the borrower does fall off of the delinquent borrowers report. So if you're using this to actually figure out what your cohort default rates are going to be, it's going to understate your borrower if they've already defaulted. So that's another reason why this is designed specifically for default prevention work and not for estimating your cohort default rates. Again, you're going to specify that cohort year for entering, and then again, you get to pick the individual buckets, I like to say, of delinquency. Notice there is a 360 days bucket. If the loan has not yet transferred from the federal loan servicer to DMCS, but it is more than 360 days delinquent, we do include it on the report, but I'll caution you that there's not too much to do for those borrowers other than to help them rehab. They just haven't made it to DMCS yet. The delinquency can't be cured after 360 without a rehabilitation. The delinquent borrowers report does include the student identifiers and contact information, and then at a loan level also includes the date of delinquency, the calculation of the number of days, date of repayment, defaulted loan status, and some other information that's useful. All right, one more report, then I may hand it off to Cindy. I feel like I've been very long-winded.
No, you haven't. You've been great.
Okay, good. I'm that guy, I could talk about report. We could probably go on for a good 3 hours.
Oh, no.
If you,
Time to hand off.
So we talk about the CDR, the loan record detail, or the CDR history report as a default prevention tool. But if a borrower's made it onto your CDR in the numerator, it's almost too late for you to take much action other than to figure out, did something go wrong? Meaning, should the borrower enter a repayment sooner than they should have? Things like that. If a borrower's defaulted, the only thing the borrower can do to undefault and come out of your numerator is rehabilitate. Most of the time, there's not enough days in the 3-year period for the borrower to actually rehab within that period. So we'll talk about this as a default prevention tool because, of course, it drives the need for default prevention plans and things like that. But if the borrower's made it this far into your numerator, that's not good, and there's not a whole lot we can do other than to get that borrower rehabilitated to get them out of your numerator. So I encourage you, as we talk about this, to lean much more heavily towards the school portfolio report. I told you, I never go to a conference without talking about it. But we will talk about the loan record detail or school history report. This report is automatically distributed with each release of the cohort default rate. It is available in fixed width and pre-formatted formats. We also just released it in CSV last year, and we are going to begin pushing it out in CSV version along with the fixed width and pre-formatted starting with the fall 2017 CDR release. Unlike the other reports, you do get to select the individual cohort year that this is applied to, because this is specific to a cohort calculation. So you can actually tell us, do you want the draft or the official for any given year, and up to many years in the past. I think it goes back to 1999, 96 maybe. 99,
You're sure?
I am sure. Yes.
You sure? Okay, thank you, Eric. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about why create a plan. So Eric's given us context, and that we thought the flow would work a little bit better to talk about the tools, and then what do you do with the data? Now that you have the data, how do we begin to create our plan? So you'll see in the next series of slides, we talk about when a school must complete a plan. But it's important, and we do encourage all schools to have some kind of roadmap, some kind of default prevention plan in place as part of normal course of business. So why is it important? It's really going to establish your default prevention goals. It really defines what your commitment to default prevention is. It's going to provide your framework. It does absolutely protect the integrity of the loan programs, and it's really the right thing to do. We talk about data a lot because that guides us, but it really is a student behind all that data, and so we have to remind ourselves sometimes that it's just important to kind of get into the heart of why students are defaulting and why they're not successful. So again, when we talk about when a school must provide or must complete a default prevention plan and submit it to the department, in the event for 66814, in the event that a school is new to the direct loan program or they are changing ownership, that is one instance when a school must provide a default prevention plan. The other instance is the one that we're going to talk at great length, and why Eric shared so much about the reporting, is when a school has a CDR that's in excess of 30% or 30% and greater. And again, this is an area where we want to make sure that that's not the first time that you are engaging in a default prevention plan. You want to begin to look at your CDRs. If you're hitting, say, 18 and you're seeing a trend upwards, those are your triggers that you need to make sure that you have a robust plan, and what do you need to have in place in order to be successful. So in the event that you have a CDR that's 30% or greater, the first year you must complete your plan and you must create a default prevention task force. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the task force and who is included on that task force. And you must submit that plan to the department. In the event that you have a second consecutive year of 30% or more, you would revise that plan and then resubmit it. And generally, when you're in the first year and then right after you're, because of the timing of the first year CDR and the second, there's not a whole lot you can necessarily see as a difference between the first and second year if you're in that category. But what we like to do, the analyst at the department, is just evaluate that plan. We look at things like, do you have a calendar? Do you have measurable steps that you work with the servicer? We're going to look at some key areas that we think that should be included in that plan so that you can work that plan. And then unfortunately, in the third year, if you have 3 consecutive years of 30% or greater, you will lose eligibility for your grant and program and your direct loans. So what do we look for in your plan? So the first thing that we want to identify are, what are the factors that are causing your rate to exceed the threshold? So Eric talked a great deal about the data that you can get within NSLDS, and that's going to aid you in being able to conduct your analysis. You're going to be able to identify the factors that increase the risk, and that's going to be through your analysis. You want to set measurable objectives on how you're going to improve that rate, and then specify actions in order to improve that. So you want some measures that are in place. We'll talk a little bit about counseling and repayment options as well as financial literacy, but as we kind of work through, I have yesterday you have the benefit of having our session yesterday, and we got a lot of questions about counseling and entrance counseling and what we can do, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. So the areas I want to talk about, first I want to talk about assembling your task force. What does that look like? What are your goals? How do you establish goals for your team? Talk about your analyzing of the data, and then how do you measure results? And then I'm going to open it up for questions. So first, when we talk about default prevention, we start by saying that this is a school-wide effort. Oftentimes, we hear from schools that this responsibility falls on the shoulders of the financial aid office. So tell them the lady at the department said that it's not the sole responsibility. I didn't say old lady, I just said the lady. Tell them that the lady said this kind of activity is not the sole responsibility of the financial aid office, that it is a school-wide effort. Your task force should include all aspects, all responsibilities across your campus. So you want to assess your available resources. You want to look at comprising a team that's across campus. You want to identify the purpose of your task force, and most importantly, you want to detail what those responsibilities are. So the members of your team are going to include, again, all aspects of your school. Your financial aid office is key, but not the leader necessarily. There is enrollment. You want to make sure that someone on your team that's a part of the enrollment office. Academic affairs. We definitely want your senior school officials involved because they're going to set priorities. And if you happen to be in a situation where you're 30% or greater, absolutely your senior officials needs to be aware of what the impact to the aid programs are in the event of a high default rate. Student services and career counseling are also key areas that you want, and there may be others, but you look at your campus and decide what areas are important for you to have success. Again, you want to select your leader. Leader is not the financial aid person. They are a team member. You may want to have a different leader. This role should be distinct. So just like financial aid, you're concerned about packaging, getting the students off into class, those kinds of aspects. This coordinator role, your role is strictly to make sure that you look at default in all aspects of that. The function of the team, the main function of the team is to conduct your data analysis and determine what are the reasons for default at your particular school. You can't take someone else's plan and plop your name on it and say, this is my plan. Your plans are going to be unique to the students in your school. And so we're going to talk about that. So the first task for your team is you want to share the basics with your team. You want to make sure, if you are actually facilitating, you want to explain why a high default rate could impact your school. That students rely on financial aid, and if that is removed, how many dollars you are going to lose from your institution if you lose your ability to administer Title IV. You want to talk about what the CDR is and how it will impact your institution. I think sometimes we get into these categories when we get high CDR, so it's important to have those conversations now to make everyone aware. And then why default prevention is just necessary. So when you establish your team goals, you want to study your default student population. So Eric has already given you a number of reports that you can identify your student population. There is a loan record detail report. You still call it the LRDR? The LRDR, okay. You know we have to have an acronym. So the loan record detail report may be the first report, one of the detail reports where you're going to begin to identify, those are the numerator, right?
It's the numerator.
It's the numerator, okay. So you want to look at that because that may be where you want to start. It's a much smaller piece of the pie so that you can identify who your defaulters are. And you want to begin to identify those common characteristics of your defaulters. Oftentimes, you can build on your intervention strategies that you already have in existence and supplement those with other things that are available. You want to talk about those strategies and determine what works for you, what do you need to augment. And then finally, what we always want to remind schools, because we don't see as many schools reach out to their servicers, is to work with your servicers and lenders. They often have. I know for a fact the federal servicers have a number of tools and resources and ability to assist schools if you need assistance around default prevention. So I encourage you to reach out. I know that if in the direct loan program there are a number of servicers, but they do offer a number of resources and tools that you would be able to leverage. So you want to, again, partner with your federal loan servicers, find out what types of tools and services that they already have available. Don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what they have available. How does it impact your school? What kinds of tools can fit your unique circumstances? Fine-tune your procedures for the period of time while the borrower is in school. What are those in-school resources? Learn a little bit about what you need on your campus, and then have clear and precise procedures for how you are going to work with your servicer. So maybe you have a regular calendar and you say, I'm going to call X, Y, and Z servicer this week, and just keep rolling that until you actually work your accounts. So we talked a lot about analyzing your data. So you're going to need data in order to develop your plan, to execute your plan. So Eric talked a great deal about NSLDS. You're going to look at your academic data too, because you have real time. There could be gaps between what you see in NSLDS and maybe what you have on campus, as well as the servicer data. So if you access the servicer information, they too have reports that may supplement or enhance what NSLDS is already providing you. And that data may be real time. So if you're working your delinquent borrower population, NSLDS may show that that borrower is delinquent, but a servicer report may say that they've already reached out, they've already resolved that account, and that's one account you can remove from your list. So it's important for you to understand how those reports work in tandem, so that you can have the most effective way, because we don't want you duplicating what the servicer is already doing. So again, we talked about the reports. We don't need to, as I got a handoff again.
I mean, we can do it one more time.
No, I think we'll do. I think you got it. So when we talk about analyzing your data, we talk about who, what, and when. So once you define the who, then you need to determine, now, why did they default? The why will be required of your academic. You will look at your academic information. You look at student fares. You look across your campus to figure out why these students have defaulted. And knowing your why will be necessary so that you can now measure your results and create an executable way of addressing those. So we're taking our learner, and then we are going to determine how many of those borrowers are in your numerator. What characteristics do these defaulted borrowers have that we would be able to determine what steps that we can take in order to create some kind of executable plan. I think I have it. Yep. So here are examples of why. So over the course of several years, most of the schools have come back with typical findings. And if you examine this list, I'm sure you're going to see a number of students that may fall in these categories. Not unclear. So students are, schools are reporting that we have problems with maybe late admits. Maybe it is the entrance and exit counseling that they didn't complete. Now, this is my insert. So yesterday there was a lot of discussion, or there were a few questions about counseling and the parameters around what you can do with counseling. So back in April of 2015, we issued this would be a EA. It's Gen 15-06. So it's Gen 1506. and it's loan counseling requirements and flexibilities. It tells you what you can and cannot do with respect to counseling. So keep you and me out of trouble and make sure that you look at that. So it talks about under which conditions you can be more flexible with counseling. Can you augment the existing counseling? So as you know, regulations require that you administer both entrance and exit counseling. You don't have to use the entrance counseling or exit counseling products that are available on studentloans.gov. You can create your own. If you want to do your own in person, you have your own tool. As long as you meet the requirements of regulations, you can administer your own. But if you want to take what is currently available on studentloans.gov and then augment that, you're free to do that. But there are certain conditions where you cannot tie funds to the completion of entrance and exit counseling, or entrance counseling specifically. So you need to pull that document out, and we can talk about it when we open it up for questions if you have specific questions, but I think that's a good reference point as well. So when you are creating your plan, we talked about that this plan is going to be unique to you. We did initially see schools that tried to take another plan and put their name on it and call it their own, and that was not successful. So we want you to leverage your reporting, look at what is available to you, and create your plan that is unique to you. You can compare plans, absolutely. Same school type, maybe populations, and there's some benefit in actually looking at other school plans, but we really want your plan to be unique to your circumstances. So when we talk about measuring results, you want to include your information on your at-risk borrowers. What are those intervention points that you can use to reduce default? Be specific. So your plan should identify how to address these conditions. You don't want to be so generic that or create a task that is not achievable. You want to have small, measurable results so that you can actually see positive steps. Specify who is responsible. Again, lady said it's not all the financial aid office. And make sure that your steps are measurable. And then you just want to have a realistic and executable plan. So our quick and easy takeaways. So you want to assemble a very effective team. You want to leverage all the data that you have available at your fingertips. And you want to partner with your servicing team or your servicers or lenders. At the department, we have a team of experts, some of them are here with me today, that can assist you, whether you are in a condition where you're 30% or greater, you must work with us in order to help you with the plan, or if you are just trending upwards and need some additional assistance, we do have a team at the department that will help you to define and understand how to kind of facilitate and navigate all of the areas. It could be a daunting task to start, but reach out to us. We're happy to assist you, get started, understand the reporting, point you to the tools or trainings that may be available depending on where you are in your life cycle. So we have probably a few more minutes, and so I want to know whether you have questions or maybe some things that have worked well that you want to share with other schools. Don't be shy. Who has questions or want to share what is working? No one? We're going to get out early? Oh, come on. Eric wants to go on for another 2 hours.
So the other report I was going to talk
Okay. Our hands go up immediately. Yes. The reader. Okay, where is the school report reader found? Good question.
on your page.
It's on my page? It's on my page. Okay, so it's on our default. Oh, good for us. So on there within IFAP, there is a default prevention page, and there should be a link for that default reader. Thank you. I didn't remember that. And if you cannot find it, then you reach out to me. But I'm pretty sure that it's right there. We try to make it readily available. But there is a default prevention page that should have all of this kind of organized for you. There was another hand over here.
Just something to share, if you're just getting started with this all, if you're doing a plan or something like that. Take you to your school portfolio report and your delinquency report. Great Lakes, you're not picking one particular service, it's just who I have found the product that I like to use. You can load it into their product, you'll see access, things like that. And it'll give you pre-formatted letters, emails, for delinquency outreach. So just something that you use, and have other tools and resources that will, they can use that information and just kind of not reinventing the wheel and let you through those reports.
Did everyone hear that? Shaking, you said no? So she uses a Great Lakes tool, and they're able to aggregate the information. There are letters, there are some other tools within that product that you can load into that tool and utilize that. Who else? Thank you for sharing that. And that's true. Who else? Oh, are you that hungry? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for participating and joining us today.
Thanks.